are scanners that have been developed that can take pictures of a living, active brain. And here we see different brains, and you see that the younger brain is thicker and juicy, and just as important, the areas of high activity show up in the scan as red. The more red, the more brain activity. Now, that's a newer brain on the left and an older brain on the right. The issue here is that most of us fall somewhere in the middle. And the whole point of this exercise is to keep as far to the left as possible. But we're challenged. Here's Arnold, a picture of him relaxed on the left and stressed on the right. Now, remember, we can look into his head. And when we look into his head, this is what we see. Stress certainly activates part of the brain, and if these signals are too strong or persist too long, they can damage neurons. Here's another scenario. You've all seen this person too, driving on the cell phone, reading a newspaper, drinking coffee, multiple distractions. There's actually been studies, believe it or not, looking at these people's brains. Look at the major differences that are apparent when you're distracted driving or when you're paying attention. So this whole aspect of brain health, it begs the question, what can we do about this? Well, your grandmother will tell you, let's start with some simple things. Exercise is probably the best thing you could do to preserve brain function. Eating well, avoiding bad habits, paying attention to your medical health. But all that is obvious. The question is there something proactive rather than just regular maintenance that you can do? Is there something called a brain pill? And the answer is yes. This is where the whole field of nootropics begins. This started getting more and more attention as baby boomers started worrying about their cognition. So what is a neurotropic? Quite simply, any substance that you take to improve your brain function, whether it's memory, attention, focus, creativity, and so on. So some of you may have already heard of terms like brain food or smart drugs, and these could be in the form of pharmaceutical drugs, natural products, or even specific vitamins and minerals. One of the first drugs ever developed in this category is called Adderall. This was intended for kids with attention deficit disorder, but get this, apparently now the largest market for Adderall is the gray market, in which university students are accessing this drug for studying. Not something that I would recommend. And we can go back thousands of years. We've been using neurotropics like ginkgo, well known for preserving brain function. But all these historic herbs fall far behind the efficacy of newer discoveries. And of course, we have to mention glutathione here. Raising glutathione is one of the hottest topics in maintaining and even improving cognitive function. And in my opinion, glutathione is the best nootropic there is. But there are a bunch more coming up on the radar screen. One of the most researched natural substances that serves as a neurotropic is phosphatidylserine. And if you have problems saying that, you can call it PS. Now look at the list of areas that phosphatidylserine has been investigated for: memory, learning, attention, concentration, mood, and more. And of course, there's other substances that are receiving attention. Let's look at some vitamins. Vitamin B12 and folate are getting new recognition, except what people aren't aware of, it's not just regular B12 and folate. In this case, they need to be in a special form, what we call the methylated form, methylfolate and methyl vitamin B12. So how do these work? Let's look at the smallest functional unit in the brain, a nerve cell that you all heard its name, a neuron. This is a microphotograph of a neuron. It just looks like a tangled mess. So let's turn to a diagram of a neuron to make more sense of it. Now, a neuron has a number of parts to it. You'll see that the actual main body of the neuron is the computer where all the information is stored. Then there's this long wire that comes out of the computer called an axon. Think of this like the telephone wires you see running by the side of the road. This is where the signals travel down, and this wire can actually be a foot or more long. Then these little wires end in terminals that broadcast those signals. Think of these terminals like little radio towers. And finally, the signals from those broadcasts go out to other neurons. And the way a neuron picks up these signals are with these little tiny antennae, what we call dendrites, the little bush-like structures surrounding the body of the cell. So it's all about sending and receiving signals, broadcasting and reception. So what are these signals? Are they radio? Are they Wi-Fi? No, they're through little electrochemicals called neurotransmitters. And these neurotransmitters pass through a little gap between the neurons called a synapse. So now you're all experts in neurotransmission. And here's the thing, unlike a computer that has thousands of connections, the brain has billions of neurons and trillions of synapses, trillions. And it's through these little microscopic connections called synapses where all the communication takes place. You can see where they're glowing there, where the neurotransmitters are being passing signals. So if we look at a single synaptic connection here, let's make another computer analogy. What would happen if even a single connection on your computer wasn't working well? So now you're getting an idea how potentially fragile, given that there's trillions of these connections, how fragile your brain is. And when these connections start to fail, it will have effects on your cognition. And what is cognition? Cognition is our ability to take in and remember vast amounts of information. Cognition is our ability to even ponder our existence and the meaning of life. Cognition is the able to juggle running a meeting and thinking about what you're going to feed your kids for supper at the same time. Cognition is the ability to plan, to strategize, to look into the future. So, have any of you ever felt like this? Absent-minded, forgetting more than you used to, losing focus during a meeting, bombarded by demands and shutting down, forgetting the right words to use when you're distracted and knowing the answers, but it's on the tip of your tongue. Well, now you can do something, and that's where nootropics come in. Nootropics for long-term memory, like phosphatidylserine, nootropics for short-term memory and concentration, like green tea, neurotropics like glutathione for the neuron itself, neurotropics like methylated B12 to improve the transmission of these signals down those long axons, other neurotropics like chromium, vanadium that are involved in energy management or blood flow to the neurons, so many ways, neurotropics that influence the transmission and the function of neurotransmitters across the synapse. We looked at all of these, and with that knowledge in hand, we presented something that I'm really, really proud of, and that is the Cogniva product.